Oh, And, and we're recording. All right, Wednesday, February 25th. Welcome everybody to another Water Cooler Wednesday where we bring you new case studies, new topics in the note investing area. So whether you are an individual looking to expand or looking to new areas to invest, great show for you to watch. It's replayed full in YouTube as well. And if you're somebody advanced in the business, we bring a lot of good topics that you may not be familiar with either in the business, where we go into some of the details. But try to keep this one a little on the lighter side about things. We'll get into some detail today that's a little bit more advanced, but it works with the context of the stories. And that is this topic today, which is really about buying notes that are not perfect. We run into that a lot. In fact, we don't see perfect notes that often. They all have something with them. So it's really a matter of identifying the problems, being able to come up with the proper solution. And that's where experience and education and everything else comes into play. And speaking of education, I'm joined as always by Dwayne Gibbs, who's been with me through a lot of that education, right, buddy?
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Yeah, we were
But
road warriors, everybody. We traveled with each other for years, 10
yeah,
years, 12 years, something like
more
that.
probably more close
Probably
to
more.
yeah, I would
I
say.
try and still keep me on the younger end of things,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah. I get it.
I know I got to keep changing my bio. Go, leave the numbers the same. They're good enough. I don't need to.
Yeah.
uh, but anyhow, all right. I've got some interesting things I've been working on. We've had a great first a couple of months. Losing track. I think we've closed on 8 deals, but I got three or four more already getting ready to close and put offers in on six more. So we are just booming. So again, if you're a real estate investor and you're looking for something steadier, something easier to get into, something where you're not driving around town looking at 100 properties to find 10 to put offers in to buy one and all that kind of stuff that you hear, the note business, we're getting nice, steady 10 to 12% returns. What real estate's appreciating 3-4% per year, but you got fluctuations where in certain pockets of the country, real estate values have actually gone down. But you know what? The monthly payments that we buy stay steady. They stay steady and it's consistent payments. And it's definitely something that you should, at a minimum, add to your portfolio, but possibly even go from becoming a property flipper, fix and flipper, or landlord and finding an alternative. Take that experience and put it into something else that will be a lot easier on you. A lot more inventory. Like I said, we're going gangbusters right now, and I'm just keeping up with the demand, which has been great. So getting back to the main topic here is every note has some kind of an issue. So you just have to identify what that is, and some issues are bigger than others, and you just have to understand that when you're going in, the goal is always to buy right. And part of that buying right is if there is damages that I have to fix, I have to adjust that in my purchase price. I have to be able to get bigger discounts, and I can justify that discount by pointing out the flaws in the note. And one might be surprised to learn that a lot of times note sellers don't know the flaws in their notes. They just don't. They're not paying that much attention because, again, a lot of times you board these loans, it's on autopilot, and you're not watching. And I get it. But when you go to sell it, you better look back into that note and see what your issues are. But that's what I do. I got to go through them and go, here's what I found. Now you can fix it and pay for it, or we can adjust it on the other end. Either way, this is a problem. So one of these notes, I've never talked about it on water cooler because it goes back before we started water cooler, about 2 years ago. So a pretty interesting story. I was at a restaurant down in Fort Lauderdale and struck up a conversation with the guy next to me, and turns out he's a real estate appraiser. So I told him about what I did in the note business and everything, and he was intrigued. And within a month or so, he became a client of mine. So I was helping him on the consulting level, and we found a deal. And he's the kind of guy who's a little bit more, let's say, aggressive on deals, and got into a good one. And what's cool about it now is I'm going to take you from that note, from where he started on that note, all the way through to where it is now and what's happening next, which is another great thing to be in, to see these deals from start into the future. But before we get to that one, let me point out something on this one. This was a deal that we looked at. I'll share my screen in just a second here. This is a deal that, Dwayne, you may have seen maybe on one of my member only Zoom nights on Wednesday. Um, I don't know if that picture rings a bell, but this is a property up in Detroit that we bought. And the identifiable problem on this one, just again to show you how all these have some issues, was the delinquency on property taxes. Is this ringing a bell, Dwayne? Maybe not.
No, I don't remember this.
Okay, so this property in Detroit, when we bought it, had delinquencies going back from 2023 to 2024. We bought this at the very end of 2025. Got it. I knowingly bought that way. I knew that those taxes were there, but we got a great deal on this loan to counter that. And I also, having fully researched how our property taxes handled in Michigan, in Wayne County, what's the time frame? How much trouble are we in? And it takes about 3 years, by the way, up there to have a tax delinquency turn into a tax sale. That's when we're really at the peak of our danger, because if it goes to a tax sale, we potentially could be wiped out. Now, we're not always going to be wiped out, because we're going to be aware of that. We can fix that. We might even, in certain particular cases, which is a little bit more risky, let it go through the tax sale and make sure we have a representative there to protect our interests, if there's a lot of equity or something like that. But with this property, there was a bunch of equity in it. I didn't think they wanted to lose it. And I was even questioning the fact if the borrower even knew that these taxes were delinquent. Because a lot of times the borrowers aren't, especially if it's done on some kind of a land contract or contract for deed, because the borrower's not on the official records, the tax bill goes to the note holder. And if the note holder doesn't convey that information and tell them, hey, you guys by contract have to pay this, they may not be aware of it. They think it's
That's
in
right.
their monthly payments.
That's right.
That's what happens for most people, right? And there's no guidebook that comes with the loan for the borrower, right? Anything like that. It's basically make your payment, and they think it's all being paid. Okay. So whatever the case is, that's what we were facing in buying this. So initially I went to the seller and said, all right, what do you want to do? Do you want to pay that? And then I'll pay your price on the loan, or do you want to just take that off the price? Right. So we had a little bit of a negotiation on that. Now, in doing my research, right? I mean, I went through the whole process. What happens here if I've got 2023 taxes? This is before I bought it, everybody. This is the smart way to do it, right? Because I know going in, okay, here's when in March 2026 is when I really got to get serious about this. So closing at the 2025, I knew I had some time. I kept checking the list to see if they were on the foreclosure list. They weren't, you know. So March 2026 is what? Right around the corner, right? So it's time to start to do this. So after we bought this note, I found the solution, and the best solution for this borrower was this. There's a government pay plan where you can pay those property taxes over 5 years, which makes it very, very affordable.
Absolutely.
you know so all you have to do is apply. It's one of these things. If you apply and you already have delinquencies, guess what? You're approved. And when they're approved, they can't foreclose. It just stops all of that. They go, person's working on it, we're good, no need to pursue. As the note owner, that's a great thing. So that was solution number one. Best for us, best for the borrower. Solution number two would have been for us to pay it and then collect it from the borrower, but that might mean monthly payments, or it might mean, yeah, we add it to the balance of the loan, but we don't get paid on that until the loan pays off. Well, that might be 15 years, you know, and that's why you have to make a discount on that to go, wait a minute, I got to pay these property taxes. I might not collect them for 15 years. Yeah, I'll collect them, but is it really, financially worth it? So there are several options, including letting it go to a sale, which in this case may have worked out, but a little bit more risky. Would have to front some more money on that. This is the best solution on this deal. So this is when I first showed this with my partner student to invest in this. I pointed this out. I said, "This is what we're dealing with." I said, "But when we buy this, we've got January, February, March to work on this person through our servicing company to get them to sign up for the program." So that's what we did. And happy to say that, guess what? They paid it. So now you'll see the original screenshot here shows status delinquent. And now when you go there, it says status IRSPA, which is what? IRSPA, which is this government program. So they applied for it, and both of these loans are under it. Was it worth it for them to do that? Yeah, the other thing you'll notice is the amount due, 1,200 and 1,100. Nope, not anymore, 981 and 1,100. They actually reduced the balances as part of this program, set them up on a monthly payment, which is like $67 a month, something like that. Completely affordable. Everybody is good. And so I was able just to go right on public records and look all that up and go, ooh, beautiful. They applied, and everybody is happy and moving forward.
So, question on that. What is the repercussion if they don't pay the $67 a month?
If they don't pay the $67 a month and they breach the plan, they'll be like anything else. There'll be a reach out. There'll be some kind of, what can you afford sort of thing, perhaps.
Mhm.
When people are asking for help on stuff like this, they really, this branch of the government doesn't want to be in the position where they're foreclosing on these folks over $67.
Correct.
And
I'm
they,
just saying, I was asking because
yeah,
probably somebody out there listening that has
yeah.
that question of, what happens if they don't pay it?
And those stories make headlines, and that's not good,
Oh, yeah.
and that sort of thing. And it's happened. I mean, there's definitely cases even in Michigan where somebody loses a house like that, but then you don't see the follow-up headlines where they go, yeah, we shouldn't have done that. We shouldn't
Yeah.
have taken that widow and put her out on the street over $50. So pretty cool to see those kind of things work out. When we were coming right up to the wire and you know, starting to have those serious discussions of, well, do we pay it? And I keep looking at the clockwork going, well, by March they have to do that. The title still gets vested to the county in April, meaning we can still go ahead and pay it after April. So we really could drag it out a little bit further because the actual sale wouldn't be until September. So I have a tendency to be patient on these things where someone new go, well, we got to take care of it. We got to, I'm like, yeah, you gotta let the pressure build up on this borrower too, because this borrower knows that they can lose their house over this. We could foreclose on them on this because part of their contract says they have the responsibility to pay the property taxes. So if they don't, we could start our own foreclosure on this,
Hmm.
and move forward. So they don't want to lose all the equity. They don't want to lose their home and all that sort of stuff. And it's a younger couple. So great. Now they figured out they didn't know about the government program. I had to
Most
let
people
them
don't.
let them know that. And so giving them some information and they're happy and we're happy. So good on them. All right. So the other thing is, where do I start on this one? So this was a deal that going back to the guy in Fort Lauderdale who's the appraiser. So this is the second note that he bought. The first one I got him into is a land deal up in New England. That one just paid off in full, by the way, a couple of months ago. So he was happy on that. It paid off early, had a really strong return on that one, over 18%, because of the early payoff. So that was great. This one is cooking along, but when he first bought this, again, I let him know. I said, okay, you got to be more active on this one. This is not really a passive investment here. We're buying something where right out of the gate, these borrowers struggled. Okay, so this was one of those arrangements that you see typically when a real estate investor sells a property to someone who works for them, a handyman, a contractor sort of deal. So this was a fixer-upper, and the real estate investor bought it, and somebody who works for him as a handyman said, "Boy, I'd like to buy that for my daughter. It'd be perfect."
Yeah, the bones are good.
Yeah,
Nice house.
yeah. So a lot of times what happens with handyman is their own project's the last one they work on, right? Because they're
Yeah.
working every day, right? And then it's like, hey,
I
I
get
get
to it
home
on
from work. It's
Sunday.
like, oh, I just got finished doing this all day. I'll get it to it tomorrow, and that
Yeah.
never comes. So part of the trade-off on this was from the investor standpoint, the real estate investor standpoint is I'll sell it to you. I'll give you a better price than I was going to sell it for because you're buying it as is. And this guy was going to put the sweat equity in it. Okay, so that should paint the picture of where we are. And no problem with that. So they sold it for less than it was worth. $59,000 was the sales price. They did it with financing with the land contract for 54. So obviously they put $5,000 down, and then the real estate investor is financing it for them. Now, like a lot of real estate investors, they build their business on momentum. They get in these properties, they want to cash out to put that in the next deal to cash out and move forward. When you do seller financing like this, it breaks that pattern unless you do what? Sell the note. So create the note with the intent to sell it. So that's what they did, and we knew right away. In fact, I used this several years ago as a case study for how to read payment histories and amortization schedules because the math didn't sound right. They were telling us that there was 69 payments left and I was calculating 72. Now that may not sound like a big deal to everybody, but it's an indicator that, well, wait a minute, very early in on the loan, you're already behind. So when someone gets a new loan, it goes with an amortization schedule. That schedule is going to be perfect if the person pays perfectly. If they don't, that schedule is not being met. In other words, if somebody pays extra, the schedule is not going to match up because they actually owe less than what the schedule says. If somebody's not paying enough or is late, they're going to owe more than what the schedule says. So without going into all of that minutia in this particular format, which I did before and showed payment schedules and how you read it, all that sort of stuff. Went to the note. Here's everything that works. So again, I've got all the different charts and graphs on how to do that. That's for my students and getting into all the details here. But I really outlined the whole thing to show where the math really was. But that's not the point of today's conversation. Part of today's conversation is yes. So when people get off track, the balance has to, is different than what a schedule says because of the language of these contracts. It tells you right in there, if you know how to read these things, when someone makes a payment, how is it applied? And you can see on this one, payments shall be applied first to interest, then on the balance of the principal, that sort of thing. So there's a priority on how these are paid. Sometimes it says the escrow, first. All that sort of stuff is in the language of these contracts. So we actually got a really good deal on this one because when the person pays late, less of their money is paying down the principal. So you can see this person made, I believe this was like $1,300 worth of payments, but they made it late. And because they made it late, so much of that money went to interest, not principal. So you can see their principal balance stayed the same throughout this whole thing and then dropped very, very little. Okay, these loans are written in favor of lenders, everybody. Very simple. You pay late, we collect late fees, we're making more money, and your principal balance doesn't go down as quick. We're making money two ways. That's how they're built. Okay. So, having said all of that, so this loan goes from what we would call really a semi-performing loan to now a fully performing loan. So, my student came in, bought this in semi-performing, knowing that we're actually getting more payments than was scheduled there. And in the beginning, it was a little rough going because they continued to stop and pay. And guess what? They also stopped communicating. Dwayne, shocker, right?
Ah, shocker.
They sent letters, there were phone calls being made, not from my client, but from my client's servicing company. No answer, no answer. So I remember it got to a point because I'm consulting him this whole time, and I said, well, now we're past 90 days late. That's when you start to take action above and beyond phone calls and demand and letters. You get a demand letter from an attorney. You basically get a pre-foreclosure letter saying, look, we have tried for the last 3 months to reach out with you. We have had no response. That leaves us no choice but to initiate a foreclosure on your property. We shall be filing that in the next 30 days. If we don't hear back from you, now there's still some alternatives, but you got 30 days to contact us. Otherwise, we
Mhm.
will be filing the foreclosure. Okay, so that's pretty much sums up a demand letter. And when it comes from the legal head of a law firm, it impacts a person different than just another letter from the debt collector servicing company. It has a tendency to wake them up. That's the kind of thing that we need to do because once these folks reached out, they finally figured out, oh, well, they're not really the bad guy. And he made some very simple adjustments on this loan to get them to start paying again. The date of when the payments were due was an issue for them because it would always be late because of how their pay schedule works. How hard of a fix is that? You know what I mean? It's like, okay. The small balance that they had built up, they knew, well, we can never catch up on the full thing, so we're always going to be late. Well, let's take that, pull that off the table, move it to the back of the loan. Let's get you going. Okay, it's called a forbearance. So some very, very simple textbook things to get them back on track. And in the meantime, the daughter who's living in the property, she is co-signed with her father, who's not living in the property, but the father's there to support, and he doesn't want to see his daughter and him go through a foreclosure. She got a more steady job, so things just kind of fell into place. She had a stumble. They both did. And now it's got worked out. So for 12 months, it's been paid and been paid on time. So the current balance now is $42,000, and it was initially $54,000. So they've got it down to 42,000 bucks now, which is great, performing steadily for the 12 months. And he's can afford to sell this one at a really good price. So this is a student of mine who took a semi-performing note, fixed it, shows proof through payment histories that it's been fixed. So he's increased the value of this note. Okay, because this falls more in the performing category versus non-performing. Now, when we bought this, remember the real estate investor, this guy who's created this new note, and now the guy's not paying, and that guy's not paying works for him. He was what we call a motivated seller,
I'd say.
right? He wanted out of that note. And because he bought the property inexpensively and sold it for a profit, he could afford to sell it at a discount, a good one, and still make money and remove himself from that situation. Perfect, right? So, in identifying that, my student was able to buy this note really inexpensively. Okay. And he's going to make good money on this note. But now he's at the point where one note paid off, unrelated to this one. I mentioned that earlier. Now he's thinking, all right, let me cash out of this note, and then I'll take the lump sum of both of those notes and buy some other things. Simple portfolio change, everybody. That's
Like
all.
it.
Simple portfolio change. He's got some appraisal knowledge, so he knows real estate valuations. He understands of, hey, I'll work with people to get them going again. So maybe I will buy another banged up note, fix it up again, resell it, make my lump sums and my monthly payments in the meantime and move on. So he wants to sell this note. And guess who he brought it to sell it? The person who helped him get in it. Okay. So that's where when you hear me talk about special inventory that I get, that's a result of it right there. Special inventory. He's not going to take this note anywhere else unless I looked at it and said not interested. But I know this note. Why? Because I helped him for 2 years ago and helped him through the whole thing. So I know this note. I know the title's good. I know this is good. I know the whole story on this deal. So it's very easy for me to convey that to a newer client of mine who's looking for a good now performing note. Makes
Hmm.
sense, right? So 42, and then um, because again of what my student paid for it, he can sell it to another client of mine and still give them a 12% yield.
Good deal.
Real good. And he wants
Solid.
to sell it pretty quickly. So I said, you put it at 12, it'll sell pretty quickly. Okay. Because we've got the proof of everything, how this deal has evolved, including the latest payment history, showing they're back on track. You know, it's got a forbearance at the end, if you will, a small balloon that they've moved back there. So you got some bonus yield. You're still buying it at a discount. Now you're paying 94% of the balance because the balance against 42. So you're paying about 94%. So you're still getting a discount. You got 52 months left on this thing, and you're making 12% a year. At the end of the 52nd month, when they go to pay it off, they'll either be 3 or 4 months of extended payments or there'll be a lump sum, and that's that arrearage account when he modified the loan. Okay, property value not an issue. We have a BPO going back from 2024 showing it at $63,000. So again, if you're only in it for 39, the numbers make sense there as well. Property's probably worth more than that, but even if it's still only worth 63,000 bucks, 61% ITV, under the
Good number.
7%,
That's
and
right.
you're good to go. What about those taxes? All paid, all paid, right? So we always check on that. Now, the other thing that some people talk about is can you do a partial? And this one's almost too short of a time frame to do a partial. Technically, it's not always too short of a time frame. I mean, you can sell any number of payments, but for what he wanted to accomplish, he wants to combine this money with some other money that he got from the other note, and then go back and find some more investments, that he can capitalize on. You know, pretty simple. So for him, the solution is sell the whole note. You want to do it quicker, do it at 12%. You want to kind of hang out there for a few months or so, maybe at 10%. Maybe it goes a little quick at 10%, but he's got the numbers in there to sell it at a proper price. So fixer uppers, that's what people understand in real estate. That's what this note was all about. And all of this also shows the liquidity of the marketplace. He bought this in 2024, worked it out, collected the payments. Now it's time for him to cash it out, let somebody else enjoy that cash flow for the next 52 months, and he's on to another project.
Good deal.
I like seeing stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a good solid deal.
You know, a lot of times people just talk about, yeah, buying this note or buy that note. Here's what you could do. Here's what you could do. Here's what you could do. This is what they did. And because they're around a long time and I'm working with them over long periods of time, I get to see these things go through all of these changes. And I already have a new client who's going to be buying this note. Real simple. I've got all the files put together for him, got it all done, and just an easy transaction to do.
A point that I'd like to make on this is when we talk to people, you and I both know everybody wants to know, okay, where's the inventory? Where's the inventory? And I went to this company and they didn't have much inventory, and it's very important for people to understand you have to be constantly evolving and educating people. So you need to know the business so you can go and create your own avatar of buyers and sellers. And so I think it's very important. I mean, you do it every single day. You have new clients, people that we've educated over the years that come to you because they know your track record, because they know your style, because it, they know that you have a avatar of people that you can pass notes off to. And so I think it's really important for people that want to do the business understand that you can create your own. So you don't have to wait for big companies. You can create your own inventory, and it just takes time. It just
Yeah.
takes time. But at the end of the day, get really good at understanding what you're doing so you can explain it to someone in a simplistic way to where they want to now work with you or, buy or sell from you.
Yeah. Out of the 10 notes that we've closed so far, two of them came to me from former students. One built up a really nice portfolio, 40 some odd notes, and he's starting to sell some of those off. Um, just because, you know, and so he brought that to me. And then the other one is more active investor out in Arizona, brought a good deal to me, knows what I'm looking for, fit the need, got that one done. And then the other five, so out of the 10, seven notes came to me and went nowhere else.
Right.
Yeah, which I think is your point. They weren't
Yeah.
shopped around. They came to me. That the one where we bought five from the same company, that was a relationship that I built, someone that I met, and networked with, and actually pointed out initially when I first met with this person, I said, I like certain things about your note, but here's the problem. I can't pay you what you're looking for in these notes, and here's why. And he's like,
Now they understand though.
and I said, here's the solution. Here's what I can do.
Right.
And those are the ones we bought partials on, which he had never heard of.
Right.
Okay. And so yeah, so seven out of the 10 deals we've closed already, not traded anywhere else. The four or five that we're working on right now were available to anybody who knew what the heck they were doing. They just have to identify what the issues are and you know be able to move on them. So you're right, inventory's out there, and it's not all special inventory. A lot of it's available to the any investor, but it does come down to knowing what works and what doesn't work. And I think some of the deals that I see and buy have identifiable problems, like the ones I showed today, but people don't know how to handle it. So for example, people who aren't trained right, they see a deal like the one I showed where the 2 years of delinquent taxes, and they go, oh, you're going to lose that through tax sale. It's like, no, there's a lot of things you can do. And it's okay to buy it that way. Just know when you need to take action and what you have to do to fix it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people just wouldn't know what to do and they move away, and that's so. But again, that's the cost of ignorance. And again, sorry, don't take ignorance as a wrong way. I'm not calling anybody stupid. It's just if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
That's the thing. You're just ignorant of how it works. So pretty cool stuff. I like seeing deals like that. I had some other stuff which I'll do next next week because it's too big of a topic to get in here today. But I put together some really good tools, and maybe that's what we'll talk about in the business, tools that you need in the business. So this is a spreadsheet that I have that compares every state. It talks about contract for deeds and does it have specific laws? Does it have to be recorded? Do they allow eviction or do you have to do foreclosure? If you do have to do foreclosure, what is the foreclosure? Is it non-judicial, judicial? What does it cost? How much time does it take us? All of that sort of stuff, is here. And when you have tools like this, it makes your life so much easier because, for example, I'm working on, you see, I've got West Virginia highlighted down here. I'm dealing on with I'm dealing with. I have a deal in West Virginia right now, but I'm having some issues with it. Not surprising. The people who own this house have owned it since 1974. Okay, and they are on the deed all the way through to today. But yet This note investor came in, bought the property, apparently, sold it, the property, did both on a contract for deed. Well, in West Virginia, you don't need to record contract for deeds. So how
Mm,
do I really know that this investor actually had the right to sell this or not? Now, I believe they do, but trust but verify, right? So I've got to see the paperwork on that. Otherwise, could it be in the big picture of the world? Could it be where this person just simply found these people and said, yeah, I'll buy it from you and sold it to someone else on a contract for deed? It's unrecorded. Those people don't know that what's going on. And they didn't have the right to do that because so far all I've seen is a purchase sale agreement. And a purchase sale agreement shows me, okay, there was intent for you to buy it, but what if you never really did?
mm,
I got to see more. I got to see more proof, that you
mm.
have the right to do what you've had the right to do, and because there is potential for fraud and stuff like this. And I think Dwayne, you and I talked about that land deal where the guy was doing the old straw man technique, and I
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
caught him on it. And what I mean by that, everybody, was he had two companies, two different states, Wyoming and Florida, and he bought the land and sold it with financing to this other company where he was the borrower. So he was both. He was trying to sell that paper where he was the person who was making payments on it. Yeah, can't do that. Okay. So that's the kind of stuff that you look at. But that's why I create all these tools and I make them available to my students so we know what's going on everywhere. Because you're not going to remember every state law, everybody. I promise you that. It's not going to work. Very good. So good stuff. A lot of opportunity out there. Just have to know where the minefield is, everybody, and navigate your way through it. And if you have a map, it's a pretty simple thing to do. You go here, you turn left, you do that, you turn right, you're good. Okay. But if you don't, it will catch up to you. So it is worth it to get help. Invest in yourself first is always the key thing to do. And why not do it with somebody who's got 35 years plus of experience and have seen the ups and downs. And just with that experience, you see so many different scenarios. It's very, very, very rare that I run into something I go, wow, never seen that before. Okay. I'm not saying it's never happened. It's happened a couple times over the last 4 years or so, but it just adds into that knowledge base where it's like, all right, I've seen that one, so I won't. If I see that again, I'll know how to handle it because we already took care of it. So that's what we do, and to do it properly, I and Dwayne believe in personal help. That's really what it comes down to. Book and tape is good for overall overview. I'm a big believer. I create a lot of that content like this, create a lot of that, expands your knowledge base, but then you got to get into that application. And the application is that little speed bump you got to get over. So it makes sense to invest in yourself in doing that at whatever level. So please feel free to look around, see what everybody else is doing in the note space. Come to my website, kevinshortell.com, see what we have to offer in price and value. And I think you'll be looking to join us pretty soon. Dwayne?
Yeah, so the only point I'd like to make it I do talk to people that say, "Hey, I just want to broker deals. I want to create some fee income. I really don't want to get trained. I don't need to do that." And I think that is a misconception of people are teaching that, "Hey, you don't really need to know a whole lot. You're just brokering deals." And that's so untrue. I mean, you need to know the business. If you don't have a lot of capital to go out and buy notes yourself, fine, you can go out. But if you're smarter than the next person and you understand how the note business works, you can create some fee income, but you have to know the business.
100%, 100% right. You'll never broker a note if you don't know the business. People are going to recognize it. People are going to sniff it out, and you're not going to know what to do. And that person loses confidence in you. You don't know the right questions to
It's
ask. You
awful.
don't know the right documents to get. It's not going to work. Not
It's
going to.
awful funny how someone that's selling the note really doesn't know until you don't know what you're talking about. Then all of a sudden they read right through that you don't know what you're talking about, and then they're done with you. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
good deal.
it's
All
important.
right. Until next Wednesday, everybody, we'll have more great content for you, and I'll just have to remind myself next week to do it on some of those tools and why they're useful and what kind of things to look out for there. So by then, I'll have an update on the deal I kind of teased you with on there in West Virginia. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and just hit the website. If you like this, also go ahead and like it, make some comments. Do appreciate that. You want to see a replay? Just go
Sure.
to YouTube. It'll be there as well. All right. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you again soon.